Welcome back to the next installment of Neoliberal Week, where we dip into the strange world of think tanks. Judging by the moniker, one might think that these organizations are creative vaults filled with the smartest people in America, all working together to solve the problems of the world. The reality is a little different.
UNFTR.
So-called think tanks exist on both sides of the ideological spectrum. I want to be clear about that. You've got your middle-of-the-road OGs like Brookings, the Peterson Institute, and the Carnegie Endowment. On the left and the right, though, things get a little muddled. For example, Center for American Progress touts itself as a liberal organization, but it takes significant funding from Walmart and the Gates Foundation. Some liberals abide by this, but it's a bitter pill for progressives. Human Rights Watch is a big one that is pretty authentically liberal. But after that, the pickings are a little slim, where the big ones are concerned at least. Don't get me wrong, there are tons of smaller progressive outfits, but they struggle for funding compared to the centrist and right-wing organizations. On the right, it's also complicated. You have outright partisan hack think tanks like Mercatus, American Enterprise Institute, and the Heritage Foundation. Then, there are sizable organizations that consider themselves libertarian, classical liberal, conservative, and even centrist. We're going to do a whole series on isms, by the way, because there's a great deal of confusion about who stands for what based upon their self-identification. The bottom line is that there's an asymmetrical relationship with the billionaire class where think tank funding is concerned. Many right-wing think tanks are a critical part of the mis- and disinformation campaigns that sell the public on harmful public policies under the guise of intellectualism. So today, we're going to look at some of the most notorious organizations that create and disseminate right-wing propaganda through the media echo chamber and the political apparatus. Let's do a quick review of the tangled web of American propaganda to illustrate where think tanks fit into the process. An important disclaimer, I'm talking about the powerhouse think tanks on the right that direct public policy, not ones that solicit public donations to do critical research on specific topics like ending mass incarceration, anti-poverty initiatives, and such. I'm talking about the think tanks that were established to make ideas like cutting taxes on billionaires or privatizing our water, healthcare, and military sound like really good ideas. So here's how it works. It usually starts with a billionaire or a group of billionaires looking for ways to further consolidate their power and hold on to their money. They send boatloads of cash to a few places. One is directly to political action committees or PACs that fund political candidates and elected officials who are prepared to do their bidding. They also send it to right-wing media organizations like Newsmax and the Daily Wire to make sure their messages are heard when the time comes. And they fund think tanks that create policy papers that magically promote the desired outcome of said billionaire. The aforementioned media organizations will quote the research and even have the authors on their programs to promote it. Then, the billionaires hire lobbyists to remind elected officials where their bread is buttered, and political action committees create model legislation that gets sent to those same elected officials that were bought and paid for by the PACs. The legislation codifies the research from the think tank white paper that was promoted and normalized by the right-wing media outlet. Then they all get together on social media to talk about the bold new initiative to cut taxes on the wealthy, send more people to jail, privatize your water supply, or whatever, so that you repeat it in conversation with your friends and family as if it's a good idea. It's the circle of life. Turning back to think tanks, a few important numbers. There are 12,000 registered lobbyists in the nation carrying the policy papers for more than 1,800 think tanks. And more than half of these think tanks sprung up over the last 25 years because of the amount of money flooding into the sector. Now, in terms of how successful their efforts have been to push model legislation based on their so-called research, the Center for Public Integrity published a report in 2019 that found at least 10,000 bills were copied almost word for word from model legislation in just an 8-year period. So who are these organizations? Well, one of the most well-known groups is called ALEC, which stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council. Smart ALEC. Some of ALEC's greatest hits include the Castle Doctrine, more commonly known as the Stand Your Ground Law, protecting companies from having to disclose toxic elements used in hydraulic fracturing, known as fracking, partnering with funders like the Bradley Foundation to, quote, dismantle and defund unions, helping states to outlaw sanctuary cities, and finding ways for states to opt out of federal climate change laws. Then there's the Cato Institute, famous for preventing increases to the minimum wage, all while pushing legislation to abolish it altogether, along with parental leave. We've got Citizens for a Sound Economy, which is a Koch brother invention first chaired by Ron Paul and devoted to defanging antitrust legislation to allow large corporations to get as big as they please without government interference. Or how about the Mercatus Center, the think tank aligned with George Mason, the college that started in a strip mall and exists only to indoctrinate students into the free market ideology. Then, of course, there's the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is the granddaddy of all Koch brothers inventions who gave the world gems like the Reagan tax cuts, NAFTA, climate change denial, school choice, vouchers, and charter schools. They're also experts at fomenting war with Islamic states. Oh, and even though they originally crafted the plan known as Obamacare for then-Republican Governor Mitt Romney as a way to punish immigrants and poor people who used the emergency room when they were sick, they did an about-face on that when a black Democratic president supported it and have dedicated themselves to destroying their own invention ever since. The Heritage Foundation was so successful during the Reagan years that one of the co-founders actually bragged that Reagan had adopted 775 of their proposals. Heritage, as our big example, receives funding from a labyrinth of conservative donors, several billionaires, other foundations, foreign entities, the oil and gas, defense, tobacco, and technology industries, among others, and other undisclosed donors. So word to the wise. The next time you see someone on the telly from a think tank talking about their brand new policy paper, do a little homework to see where they get their funding from, and try to think logically about what they're saying. Just ask yourself if it makes any sense, because if they're just trying to create ways for billionaires to avoid paying more taxes, or it seems like they're just trying to give corporations control of something that the government usually handles, there's probably a pretty terrible reason as to why. Until next time, here endeth the video.